I thought that I would jump on. Haven't done a live for a little while, and I, I, I wanted to just touch upon a couple of things. Zach Polanski, Green Party in the UK, and also Keir Starmer, Green leader in the sense that he still doesn't seem to know what leadership is, but that's just my opinion. And a brief mention of Donald in the sense of I I told you so. That's what I thought. I'll come on to that shortly. Going to read a couple of snippets from the Independent. This is the headline. Starmer says Green Party are high on drugs, soft on Putin. Wow, who wrote that? I mean, that's stunning. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful attack, and just got that usual sort of play on words that politicians seem to like. Anyway, whoever it was that wrote it, probably not Keir. It's not bad, really, is it? It's not bad. And Zach Polanski of the Greens is, of course, someone who, at least you've got to hand it to him, has some sort of vim and vigor and verve about him compared to Keir Starmer. But then most people do compared to Keir, unfortunately. But let's listen to what. Well, I'll read from the article a couple of bits more. So Keir, he's launched a scathing attack during PM's question time on Wednesday, I think that was, accusing Zach or the Green Party itself, actually, of being high on drugs and soft on Putin, as the headline was, but specifically, he's targeted Zach Polanski for allegedly wanting to negotiate with Vladimir Putin to give up nuclear weapons. Now, gotta say up front that if that's what Zach is trying to do, well, good luck. I mean, on the face of it, it's laudable, isn't it? It would be great if everyone got rid of them. But as long as one group or person has that type of weapon, then it does seem to be the case that there's a balance of terror required, unfortunately. But, one's got to say, well, thanks for trying, Zach, but how would you go about it? Anyway, so the article goes on from the Independent. The heated exchange came after Green MP Ellie Chowns, I think that may be pronounced, I hope, raised concerns that agricultural pollution received one single page in the water white paper. Responding to her, Sakir stated the government had inherited a real mess on water. A mess on water is normally oil, isn't it? But anyway, I think I know what he means. But it's the usual trope, the usual phrase to be wheeled out that Keir inherited it. And no doubt Keir did inherit stuff. No doubt. But come on, give it a break. Anyway, let's get to the sort of bread and butter of this. So, um, essentially, what it would seem that Zach wants to do is is basically find a way to sit down with Putin and ensure that we can remove those nuclear weapons. And again, as I've said, that's a great idea, but ultimately, is Zach really the individual to negotiate with someone like Vladimir? You got to think not, because Zach, as far as I'm aware, I could be misquoting him, but I believe that he wants to legalize all drugs. I've said before, I believe he also wants open borders. Just it's okay, come and go as you want. And I believe that he essentially is liberal to the extent that pretty much anything goes. And it would be great to have open borders. It would be great if every drug was safe and beneficial to be able to do that. It would be fantastic if it were possible to sit with Vladimir. But I'm sorry, Zach, I think he would see you coming a mile away. I think he would spot that you're, if not someone who's just saying this stuff to be different and get your name out there, and you might be. If that's not the case, then you're so naive, you're so idealistic that he would simply run rings around about you. And I find it really peculiar that we do have somebody who is actually, as I've suggested, he's not bad. He's not bad in terms of articulating ideas. He has a certain presence. He seems to be a reasonable kind of guy. And it's just such a pity that someone who could be a credible candidate in opposition to Keir and Labour is just so far into the realms of sixth form student debate. I'd like to teach the world to sing, and we'll live in perfect harmony. That naivety is unfortunately a big weakness, and I think also the utter concept of some of the things that he suggests, like the open borders, is beyond naive. My guess is he's saying this at an extreme end to get a conversation going. I hope, I kind of hope, because otherwise it really is ridiculous, Zach. Sorry. So you kind of begin to, rather than being a credible, relatively charismatic candidate, make Keir look good. And that's not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for the party. It's not good for the country. Instead, what do we see? The continual rise, as it were, of reform. We see that a couple more candidates, sorry, wrong word, not candidates, a couple more people have joined. I was going to say defected, but they're not. Not everyone who's joining is a defector, and inevitable, actually. It's going to be inevitable because until the Tories get their act together, if they can get their act together and really coalesce and figure out what they are about, Reform are running on that ticket of maybe we haven't got all the details worked out and they don't, but what we strongly oppose is this, this, and this. And so we have this drift across. And I suspect there will be more people from the Tory party who head towards reform. It doesn't mean to say that all is lost for the Tories. It doesn't mean to say that they won't get their act together. They're gradually getting there. They're gradually becoming more cohesive, but also, just like people have got that sour taste in their mouth about Labour, now there are still those echoes of the 14 years with the Tories. So Reform once more look like they're kind of the party to beat. But we also have Ben Habib around, and we also have Rupert Lowe around. And they, in many ways, seem to produce a clearer message than Reform. And maybe that is because there's less of them, as it were. And Ben and Rupert are kind of carrying the narrative. And so it seems clearer, it seems more cohesive. In that cohesion and clarity can also be their weakness because they don't have that many people around them at this point in time. Relatively speaking, Reform are making the headlines, but as I've said, it's we've got to be careful to not put all the eggs in one basket and be led somewhere like the Pied Piper leading people somewhere uh, without due scrutiny. Each and every one of us has to do our due diligence with these people because, again, it is so tempting to say, yeah, the Labour were atrocious, the Tories were atrocious before them. Here's something bright and shiny telling me what I want to hear. Doesn't mean to say it isn't reform. I just think that being circumspect, being cautious, asking questions, really exposing what these parties and these leaders are all about is absolutely essential. But I tell you what, it's good to have the choice. It's good that Reform are there. It's good that Ben is there. It's good that Rupert are there. It's good that Kemi and the Tories are beginning to sort of revivify themselves and snap out of it, because it becomes much more then for the population a buyer's market, rather than, well, generally speaking, it's going to be Labour, it's going to be the Tories. That's kind of it for most of the country. Of course, there's Plaid Cymru, and there's also the SNP and the aforementioned Greens. But to me, the Greens is just you're going too far in one direction, that I cannot quite figure out why you would do that. Because again, I think if you are, it's almost as if the world was the way that I would like it to be, your policies would be fantastic. But hello, look around, it isn't. There are some real sharks out there. There are some countries and leaders who look at the UK and the US for that matter with rapacious eyes, with eyes that dislike, detest, hate, and would love to dismantle. And we've got to be cautious of that. So I don't quite know where you're coming from, Zach, which is a pity. But maybe you will refine your messages, maybe as you and your party mature. Because again, come on in, the water's fine. Let's have a proper contest here. Let's really expose these leaders for who they are and who they aren't. And let's not blindly be led by that Pied Piper, whoever he or she may be. Also, in terms of a little headline, um, I thought I would pull up this from, I think that's Sky. Anyway, the headline is Trump wants immediate negotiations to acquire Greenland, but insists he won't use force. Now, I said before that my guess was that what Donald Trump was doing was being extreme in the language to waken everybody up to go, oh, hold on a second, what is going on here? Force? Are you kidding? Really? Seriously? Force? You must be joking. No, I'm not joking. Military? Well, that might happen. That might happen. And a lot of people, including me, are going, John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. And when I thought about it, I thought he probably isn't. I mean, he can't be. And then you remember the art of the deal, who you're dealing with. It's Donald Trump. He's a negotiator. It's all about landing the best deal for him and his people and his country or his business, whatever it may be. And so I think what we're seeing here, or we're seeing, was him putting that extreme idea out there so that the fallback, anything less than that, it's like almost like, whoa, sigh of relief. And even though I had said that, when I read the headline, I thought, all right, okay, we can crank it back from DEFCON 73 or whatever it might be. And he certainly stirred things up. My opinion is that I think there's going to be a better way to do it than he's at the moment suggesting, but that's perhaps what he's looking for. Okay, what's your fallback position? You're frightened by what I said. Tell me then what you will do. And hopefully that will be sorted, because no doubt Greenland is significant. And listening to a few people being interviewed who are in the indigenous population in Greenland, it's a mixed bag. Some people are saying, yeah, it'd be great. US, and I think a couple of young guys were saying, yeah, McDonald's. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. And other people were saying no. And I think it was a Danish. Now, forgive me. I'm guessing. I think. I mean, it was a politician. So let me say, a member of parliament. the Danish equivalent, but certainly a politician who stood up. Maybe it was at a European, maybe it was a European meeting. But anyway, the headline was he stood up, said whatever he was going to say, and then told Donald to f off. And to be fair, that's probably language that Donald understands, and I understand the Danish perspective. 800 years. What are you doing? So once more, it's one of those situations where we must not be Zach and think, oh well, it'll all end up fine. No, it won't. There are some forceful characters in there. It won't end up fine unless negotiation takes place, some pretty tough negotiation to figure out the best way forward. And also, I, I would never rule out what Donald Trump might do. If I was negotiating with him, I wouldn't rule out anything. I don't think it's force. I think he wanted the effect. I think he's looking for the fallback position, but he'll want as much as he can get, of course. But there's so many facets to it. And once more, I have a sort of broad understanding of it, but I do not claim remotely to understand all the ins and outs. But I am aware that, like in many of these situations, there are different priorities and there are different desires at play, even within the same population. There's a lot of people in the US, no doubt, who would be saying, "Well, what are you doing? Leave Greenland alone." There are other people, and I've heard them saying, "No, take it. It's basically ours. We should just have that." And well, maybe the reality and the outcome ultimately will be somewhere in between, because I think just leaving a subject alone, everyone walking away and forgetting about it, is unlikely. But I also think, as I've said, that a takeover by the US, what does that mean? There are various different ways that could be interpreted, and if it were, it's simply that it was, let's call it out in the extreme version, that boom, we're in, the US is there, and it's now US soil, and we'll legislate everything and build and do whatever. And I don't think that's going to happen. But if it did, it would be a catastrophe, because look at the history, not only the joint history, of course, with Denmark, but also the history of that country itself and the indigenous people. So that would be crazy. But one never should presume that somebody won't want to do it somewhere, which is why negotiation is the key, and tough negotiation as well, because no doubt from the US side, it will be quite tough. And so it looks like, anyway, no force. Thank goodness for a little bit of common sense. One hopes that continues. Zach, as I've suggested, is in this zone of I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. If you don't know what I'm saying, by the way, then check out, I think it was probably from the 70s, the Coca-Cola advert where everybody's drinking a bottle of Coke, and it's a US advert, and it's all very diverse and lovely, and no conflict and living together. And wouldn't that be wonderful? And it would be wonderful. It would be absolutely wonderful. And yet, you've still got to be able to protect yourself. And unfortunately, defense at the moment includes those very, very destructive weapons. And then back to Keir. Well, again, he's been taking a bit of a savaging once more. I mean, no surprise, he still remains the most unpopular leader ever. I mean, I think in terms of prime ministers, but I would be interested if anyone's got a poll of leadership generally out there. Maybe I'll have a look for that myself and find out if somebody has actually looked across some of the disciplines like business, politics in the past, present day. So I got to should leave the microphone alone, and then Hazel Blockedge, whoever do you mean, is knackered from carrying all his BS around, and I'm knackered from 4 hour how do you say is it Kama Sutra workout? Well, well, congratulations. 4 hours. But perhaps you mean what is being done to you and therefore the country, which could be the angle you're coming from. No pun intended. Um, so yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Zach, really, he does. He needs to stay away from the microphone. Well, until he sort of just really consolidates, because I want to like the guy, and I want this credible opposition. As I've said, I want more than one party to be credible. We need the choice of not only credible but substantive, decent, good leaders, competent leaders, and leadership. So I want them to at least put up a good contrast to Labour and indeed the other parties who are vying. And so we should hear what the Greens have got to say, but nobody's going to listen to any great degree when you sort of come up with stuff and out with stuff like that. So yeah, until he does think it through, he really needs, in my opinion, to just consolidate some of his thinking and manifesto rhetoric, just somewhere embedded into a little bit of reality. Just a little bit. It's okay to use imagination. It's okay to have flights of fancy. But honestly, that sort of stuff, it's just not going to get far, and that's a shame because it's a waste of a possible alternative to what we have. It's a waste potentially of a coalition going forward. Who knows? I mean, I think why I'm spending a bit of time talking about him is because it is at least a breath of fresh air. It is slightly insane, in my opinion, but it's different. However, as I started off, it does make Keir look like the sensible one, and so you've got to, Zach, you've got to think about that. If you do watch this, you're making Keir look sensible. You're not making him look charismatic. You're making him look sensible. You're making him look like a better choice than you. Come on, think about that. Do something different. You have the ability. I'm sure you've got the intelligence. I'm sure you've got the team around you. But that stuff, that's just gibberish. Gibberish to grab headlines. And that's no good. We need something substantive these days. We need some of the big beasts back in terms of leadership. People who had the intellect, who had the presence and the presence of mind, who had the knowledge, who had the ability to conduct themselves in a way that people felt inspired by: honesty, decency, integrity, transparency, and also who had the ability to learn and tackle complex issues and find ways around them with an element of gravitas and charisma. That's who we need. So if that's you, Zach, sign up. Looking around, there's not that many people like that. We get little snippets from each of the possible leaders going forward. Unfortunately, of the list of attributes that I just mentioned, Keir is not really ticking any of those boxes, unfortunately, which is a real shame. It would have been great. I'd loved him to have been great. It's been almost the exact polar opposite. Anyway, on that bombshell, I shall leave you to it. If you've been watching, thank you very much. Thank you for those likes. And also, if you still are watching, thanks. And thanks for the comment. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.